Hi everyone, welcome back to Red 5 Scale Models. I just thought I'd do a very quick tutorial on how to go about making some corrugated iron sheeting for dioramas, figure builds, Warhammer builds, things like that. Very quick, very straightforward. Hope you enjoy. Okay, so I normally start off with cardboard box. This time of year is perfect because you're going to get a lot of packages from like Amazon and things like that, and it needs to have a very fine corrugate layer in. Just a single corrugate layer, double corrugate doesn't work. And basically just hack out the piece of iron that you want to make. I always make it a little bit bigger because you can always go back and tidy it up at a later date. And then it's just a case of finding the gaps in the corrugation and then basically separating. A bit of a boring job, but separating the top layer of the board, being as gentle as you can so you don't crush the fluting inside, and stripping all that top layer of board until you're left with that and that alone. Don't worry about the back, because this is going to be for standing up against things, lying on floor, putting in rough ground. It isn't going to be something that you'll see both sides of, because the minute you start trying to be clever and taking the back piece of board away, it'll just flatten out. It'll just not work. So once I've stripped that, I'll come back to you and how I'll go about the next step. So I've cleaned those two up now. I'm doing two pieces. You've got a choice now to go whether you want something nice and rusted, beaten up, or more of a fresh corrugated iron if you're doing something relatively unweathered, untouched. For the rusted one, you take a colour from Citadel. It's a technical paint. It's called Typhus Corrosion. It's got a grit in it, and basically just give your board a good thick coat. Don't worry about, try to be as gently as you can, sorry, to not crush the corrugate down. But don't worry about the little imperfections in. All that'll do, the little bits of board that's still left on there, the scrap bits, basically that type of stuff. That'll just, as soon as you put paint on, kind of turn to mush and just make it look as though there's a bit of an imperfection in the metal. So you give it a good coat of Typhus Corrosion, and for newer, more fresher metal, I take a colour called Lead Belcher, again from the Citadel range. I do use other paints, but just so happen to have a lot of these ones. And again, give it a good old coat. It's quite a dark silvery colour. Good old coat. And once that's done and dry, I'll come back to you. Okay, so that's both nice and dry there now. I actually did that one last night and give it a good couple of coats. That one's not had as many, but you see it's gone quite rigid now. So what you can do as well, if you want to add things like sort of bullet holes or chips, damages and stuff, now's probably a good time to do it. Take a cocktail stick, you can put holes in. You can take things like sort of you can take like a knife, cut down, bend it, creases in, things like that. And then for the rusted up corrugate, you take again yet another Citadel paint, but it's called Riser Rust. It's a dry paint. And by that it means it's basically for dry brushing. Take a dry brush, or any brush really, but quite a decent sized one. Wipe as much as you can off, and then basically give the whole piece a brush with the Riser Rust. Whilst the rust's drying, this is the slightly newer. It's not meant to look factory fresh. It's a bit still rough around the edges. Again, this is just a quick one to show you how to go about doing it. You can take a bit more time. But I take a shade paint from Citadel, again, called Known Oil. This is an absolutely fantastic product. And basically load up a brush and just slap it on. Nice and thick. Don't worry about it pooling. It's going to give you that kind of definition that corrugated metal would have, where it's lighter and darker in certain patches. Give it a good coat and then let it dry. The key with all of the shade paints from Citadel and washes and things, let it dry. Absolutely bone dry before you move on. Okay, so that's the Riser Rust there, nice and dry. The next step for the rusted corrugate, take a 6B or a heavy graphite, heavy lead pencil, and basically run it down all of the raised areas to give it a bit of a metallic sheen. Just gently rub it like that. Try and catch the edges a bit heavier. And once you've done that, try to touch it as little as possible. Things like bullet holes, get right in there, because for all it's rusted, there's still at a distance has a bit of a metallic sheen to it at times. It just kind of helps give that that feeling that it is still metal. So once that's done, you can mess about with this until your heart's content, but you'll see once you're in. That's it, pretty much. You'll see once it's on the diorama, like the one up there, how effective it looks. You can add things like sort of weathering washes to it. If you want to do that, maybe perhaps give it a bit of a gloss coat before you do it. Add your wash and then give it a matte coat. You can add graffiti, all sorts of stuff. You can put wooden posts up against it and make a background of a diorama, the edge of a diorama. Play about with it to your heart's content, but it's just a cheap and cheerful way making something that's quite effective. Yeah. So once the null null's dried on the newer sheet, I'll show you how to go about that one. Okay, so that's the null null dry. It's gone nice and rigid there. So what you're gonna do? Go back in with the lead belcher again. And wipe off some of the excess and give it another very quick dry brush just to bring out the base colour again. Nice and straightforward. So now you've got the null Nile nice and dry and the lead belcher dry brush on. You're going to go in with a coat or a colour called Stormhost Silver, again from Citadel. It's a layer paint, so it's a little bit thinner. But again, we're just going to use it as a dry brush in this instance. Make sure there's very little on your brush, and then just give the whole thing, just the raised areas, be a little bit lighter. You don't want to cover it. A quick brush with the Stormhost Silver. Okay, so that's pretty much it. Nice and quick, nice and straightforward. You can, again, like anything, these are very just quick examples. You can take a little bit more time, a little bit more concentration, and get some really good results. But you've got your nice newish kind of corrugate there. Just general rusted piece of iron. You can chuck it on the base of a figure, in with a diorama. Just gives that little bit of life and a little bit more age. You can put things like a bit what looks meant to be looking like moss and stuff growing along, so you can put it again somewhere like that in the background of a scene, to make it look as though there's a corrugated fence or something running alongside. And I've touched up the rust details with a colour called Troll Slayer Orange, but again, and use your own interpretation of how you want it to look. I've also used some AK weathering pencils to get a bit of a streaking effect going on. They are a really good product, water-based, essentially watercolour pencils that you can put on as your last stage of weathering. Highly recommend them. So thanks for listening. I hope again this helps at least one person out there.